Hey everybody, it's Handsome Aaron here, making another video on the Star Wars prequels. I just watched Attack of the Clones, and I want to talk to you all about it. This isn't like a comprehensive review, just like the previous one. I'm not gonna like edit this in any way. This is just, I just watched this movie, and I just started writing notes about things that I was thinking about while watching it. And I'm just gonna kind of ramble for a while. So, a few things about Attack of the Clones before we get started here. I remembered actually quite liking this one from when I saw it when I was like 10. I have no idea why. I think this one is actually worse than the first one. This is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It's insane how bad this movie is. So a couple of just like general notes that I want to say before we get into this. One, it is boring. A lot of the notes I wrote down, I just wrote down, this is incredibly boring over and over again, but I'm not gonna, just know that generally the movie's boring. Another thing I realized that I was writing down constantly on my notes is that the transitions in this movie are all incredibly strange. I think the other movies have this as well. The actual transitions themselves are like these like wipes, these kind of like slide or like the transitions in movies are something that you generally don't notice. Like I'm just like I'm not like a editor or anything like that, so I certainly don't notice them. In this movie, you do. And I think that possibly the first one had similar transitional wipe kind of stuff, but in this one it really stuck out. And part of it is because almost every scene in the movie just kind of awkwardly ends at some point, and so many scenes in the movie just sort of start. Characters are just at new places now, and they're just like standing there about to start doing something. It's incredibly awkward. Especially the endings. So many scenes, they just run out of dialogue to say, and the scene just suddenly ends. So that's just, I'm not gonna mention that past this. Just assume in every scene I'm talking about, that happens. So how's the movie start? So one thing that's weird, straight out of the gate, is that Padme is now a senator instead of a queen, and they actually talk about this later, that like they elect their queens and the queens have like a term limit. So I think that the Naboo apparently just call their president the queen for some reason. It's very strange. I have no idea why they did that. It starts, so I'm going to basically walk through the whole movie, because every scene basically has at least one thing in it that bothered me, and very little good to say. I have very little good to say about the movie. There's a couple things in here that I just genuinely like, but, so they land on the, it starts with a big ship with Padme on it, landing on this dock on Coruscant, same planet from the first movie. And her bodyguard guy says that there is no danger at all, and then the ship immediately explodes, and the decoy dies. And I just thought that was funny. I'm sure a lot of people did. Nothing else to say about that. Just, there's no danger. Turns out there was no danger at all. I was wrong. Immediately. Boom! And everyone's dead. But that's the thing. So, she's just a senator now. But they're still doing the thing where she has a decoy. I guess because they think they know people are still trying to kill her, but it's odd that they would still have this decoy, not just because she's not a queen anymore, so somebody like sacrificing themselves to be killed by assassins so that she doesn't is odd that someone's still willing to do that. But also, people basically found out that that's what she was doing in the first one. So if people are aware that she's doing it, wouldn't they just like watch the people around her to figure out who the real her is? And why is she dressed like she's like, now she's disguising herself as one of the like security team. So in the case of like an explosion, like what killed her decoy, she's still like right there in the line of fire. She's still like they're not. It's not like the decoy goes very publicly around and then she sneaks around, like she comes in the back entrance on like another ship that no one knows. She's like right there with the decoy still, so she's barely even in less danger, and this other person just has to die as a result. Um, uh, so yeah, that's all I gotta say about that. But okay, so then okay, there is one line that they go and they have a boring conversation and they talk about something, the assassination or politics. That's a lot of this is just fictional space politics. But they say one line in this scene that throws everything into question. I mean, it creates such a strange disconnect. Basically, they say Count Dooku. They start talking about Count Dooku for some reason. They say that he was once a Jedi. So he was once a Jedi, and he's not anymore. In fact, they later say that he trained Qui-Gon Jinn, the guy from the first one. But he's not anymore. So, does that mean you can just quit being a Jedi? Because wouldn't that solve all of Anakin's problems? Like, Anakin throughout these movies, it's like the point of these movies. I haven't rewatched the third one yet, but I do kind of. I remember it the best of the three. He's and it's in this one very strong too. He's so like irritated with the Jedi. He doesn't like them, and his main motivation in all three of these movies, well, at least this one and the third one, not really in the first one, but in this one and the third one, he's just desperate to get with Padme, and he even like marries Padme. And a huge cause of conflict in these movies is just that he's not allowed to do that. But he is allowed to quit, apparently. Count Dooku demonstrates that he can just quit and go do whatever he wants. And just no one ever brings that up. No one ever... Because you could have a scene in which he explains why he doesn't want to quit, if that's his thing. But given how central a motivation it is for him to be with Padme, and the whole thing is he's a Jedi and he can't, you'd think someone would bring up at some point, Count Dooku just apparently quit being a Jedi. Why don't you do that? Because then you could just... Like... yeah, later in the movie, Obi-Wan even, like, threatens Anakin. When towards the end they're on a transport ship, and he's like, if you do something, I don't remember, if you go try to save Padme, you'll be expelled from the Jedi Order. And it's like, that would be so perfect for Anakin's motivations. Then he could just go hook up with Natalie Portman Padme, the Queen's... Like, what a terrible fate. I'll be kicked out of the Jedi Order and just have to sleep with Natalie Portman and be married to a queen. Yeah, that one line just is like, raises so many questions. It also just raises questions about Dooku. Like, it's incredible how little this movie is interested in, just like Darth Maul in the first one. It does not care about trying to explain Dooku. Like, why did he quit? Like, he's the leader of some kind of political movement. Why is he a count? Is he a count of Geonosis? There's a planet later in the movie called Geonosis with all these bug people, and that's where like the whole finale of the movie is. And it's like, is he a count of Geonosis? Was he a count of the Jedi? I don't know, and the movie doesn't know. The movie doesn't care. He is our main antagonist for this movie, but the movie does not care about making any sense out of him. Oh, this is also the scene that... So this is something that's weird about the movies. I always thought it was weird, even when I was little, that the Jedi have this relationship with the Senate, where they like kind of work for them. And this comes up in the first one too. They're like ambassadors, and they're like involved in what's happening. They're there to negotiate with the Trade Federation, and they were sent there by the Chancellor. And in this one, it's even more so. Like, they're so involved in the politics and the ongoings of the Federation. Not the Federation, the Republic. Federation, Star Trek. To the point where it just seems like the Jedi aren't really like... They just seem like a branch of the government. The Jedi come off as being like the Republic's equivalent of like the CIA or the FBI or something, or the Secret Service. They kind of seem to do all of those things, and they are clearly directly worked into this system. Like, the Jedi as a religion, it's not even like a religion here. It's like they're so integrated into everything that's happening with the higher levels of this government that the Jedi have to be like an institution that's put into their like constitution of this republic, because they are directly involved in everything. And at the end, they're like leading the not the droid army, the clone army for some reason. They like are the government's, or at least a significant part of the government. It's very strange. It's not at all what you'd think they would be just from watching the prequels, or even just seeing that they're these weird monks that wear robes and hang out in a temple. I don't think they... I mean, they clearly didn't think the Jedi through when making these prequels in terms of what they are. It's weird that Jar Jar is still here as well. Jar Jar Binks from the first one. He's like a diplomat. I think I did say in the first video I made that I was thinking, like, do the Gungan get any say in the government of this planet? Like, does the Republic recognize them? And I guess Jar Jar being there does mean that they must, at least at this point, at least now that they've proven that they're useful, they get to have their own representative. At one point he says "mooey mooey" when he says it means like very very. That seems racist. How did you... Oh, okay. Okay, so then Anakin and Obi-Wan... See, we're still really early in the movie. Anakin and Obi-Wan show up at, like, I guess, her apartment on this planet. And she looks at Anakin, Padme. She sees Anakin. It's been like 10 years since she's seen him. He's grown up. And she immediately recognizes him. Like, even though... Like, yeah, she just instantly recognizes him, even though he doesn't look anything like a decade older. He doesn't have any kind of distinguishing feature. She instantly recognizes that he's Anakin, which is odd. But it's made even weirder because, like, a few lines later, after she leaves the room, Anakin complains that she barely recognizes him. He's like, she barely recognized me. And it's like, dude, she recognized you instantly. It's kind of insane how easily she recognized you. What are you complaining about? What are you talking about? Okay, so this is where I made a note. So this is important, and this is another thing that runs through the whole movie. I can't talk about it every time it happens, because it's constantly. Every interaction between Anakin and Padme, which is a lot of interactions, that's a lot of the movie, is weird and awkward. Anakin is a awkward, creepy guy who's like weirdly and obviously obsessed with Padme and has no idea how to conduct himself around other people. Everything he says is way too intense. A lot of the time it's completely random. It just comes out of nowhere. and he's just like a weird, awkward, kind of creepy guy. It's so odd that they made this whole movie and nobody noticed how weird and awkward and creepy he is. And when I say it's kind of the same when he interacts with Obi-Wan as well. Almost every interaction is like aggressive and awkward and just inappropriate. The things that he says and does. And I realized just now that those are pretty much the only two people he does interact with in this movie. Anakin almost never talks to any other character, and if he does, it's very brief and very just like expositional. It's people like telling him that he has to go do something, and then they move on. It's mostly just him talking to Padme, and then him talking to Obi-Wan, and then and almost non-interacting with anybody else. And they're all awful. There's one scene we'll get to it later, where he's talking to Padme by the fireside for some reason, and it's almost impossible to watch. I had to pause it and collect myself because it's just so painful to watch him interact with Padme. He's so weird and so awkward and so inappropriately. He just like intense and kind of pervy. He's kind of a creep. I've rambled on about it for too long. So then they try to assassinate Padme, and everything. I just wrote the whole sentence. Everything about this assassination is stupid. So while they're an assassin's gonna kill Padme while she's asleep. For some reason, they're convinced that that's going to happen tonight. And they're right. Like, they tried to blow her up earlier that morning, and they're convinced that another assassination is going to happen now. Rather than, whenever. It's going to happen tonight. So Anakin and Obi-Wan are having a conversation about tedious politics, which is a lot of the movie. They're just tediously bickering about politics. In between Anakin inappropriately just saying how obsessed he is with Padme in a really creepy degree. But then, like a probe shows up at the window. They didn't think to have anyone looking out the windows, because the thing just flies right up to the window. Supposedly there's like a whole army of security guards downstairs in the building, but we never see them, and none of them thought maybe keep an eye outside the building through these windows. And it flies right up, and it puts just like, I guess, poisonous centipede creatures into her window. And I guess they were going to bite her and kill her. It's the most convoluted idea of how to assassinate someone ever. Like, they just flew a plane by and blew up her plane earlier that morning. Why not just do that again? Just blast the building with a bomb. Just use that same plane, fly by, blow up the apartment she's in. So then that doesn't work. Anakin runs in and kills the bugs in a way that seems very reckless, because he just swings his lightsaber like an inch from her face. Because in this movie, this is another thing that happens. The characters are basically perfect at everything that they do when the scene wants them to be, and then can be kind of easily dealt with in other scenes. We'll kind of come back to that, but this is one of the scenes where he's perfect, and so he can swing his lightsaber an inch from her face and know that she'll be fine. But then Obi-Wan grabs the probe thing, and they're flying along, and the assassin sees, and the probe, I guess, is returning to the assassin woman. And she gets out a rifle, and she's a good shot, but for some reason, she shoots the probe rather than just shooting Obi-Wan in the face. Like, she decides the best thing to do is to blow up her own robot rather than just kill the guy holding on to it. It makes no sense. So then Anakin runs outside and he hops in like just a random car and starts flying after him. And I was like, is that his car? Or did he just steal that car? And I guess he stole it because a moment later they kind of talk about it. But yeah, he just like runs along and just hops in a random yellow car and I guess luckily despite all their advanced technology, anyone can just drive anyone's car. I guess they left the key in it and Anakin just really lucked out. He didn't even like break into it. It was like an open roof vehicle. I mean, he just got in and started driving it. What else? Oh, yeah. So then they're flying around. They're flying these like Jetsons cars all over this giant cartoon city. And even though there's cars everywhere and they're getting separated, like they're falling and flying and going all over the place, they know exactly where each other are. They have no problem following this lady as they're chasing her down. And then there's this really weird part. It's so strange. I have no idea why they would include something like this. The assassin's flying along in her Jetsons car, and she leans out the window with a gun with her, and she shoots this like pylon, and it makes this purple electricity start shooting like a fence. And Anakin and Obi-Wan are flying their Jetsons cars at it, and you think they're about to do something, anything, like fly over it or something clever or exciting, but they don't. They literally just fly through the purple lightning, and then they go, oh, and then they're on the other side, and the scene just continues. The chase scene just carries on. Nothing happens. It's so strange that it's there. I guess there's a lot of stuff like that in this movie where it's like, that's probably a lot of work to make that happen, like for their computer animators. And there's no purpose for it. But here it's especially weird. They just fly through it. It doesn't do anything to their car. It doesn't do anything to them. It doesn't seem to slow them down. It's just a thing that happens. And then the chase scene continues. Okay, then Anakin jumps out of his car and he falls through the entire city and he just lands on top of her car and it's just stupid. It's just so stupid. And again, it's like makes it so wildly inconsistent because the only explanation you give is, oh, it's the Force. He is powerful with the Force. But that's just so wildly inconsistent in terms of what they can and can't figure out through the Force. Like, so much of the movie, when the action scenes start, there's a strange disconnect in the movie between all of the scenes where no action is happening, in which they're just somberly sitting around and talking about nonsense for ages. And then an action sequence begins, and the whole thing becomes a cartoon. Just like Looney Tunes logic. Okay, so then they follow her into this nightclub, and Obi-Wan starts drinking, and that's weird. Like, they're searching for her in this nightclub, but for some reason Obi-Wan goes straight to the bar and, like, orders a shot. Only Anakin is actually looking for her. I have no idea. It's just a weird little detail. And then for some reason she tries to kill Obi-Wan rather than just leave the bar. Like, that would have made more sense. Obi-Wan should have just stayed at the door and watched for her to try to leave, and Anakin should have gone in and looked for her. But they don't do that, and then for some reason when she has the ability to leave, she instead tries to shoot Obi-Wan in the back in the middle of this bar. It makes no sense. None of it makes any sense. And at this point, I realized that this chase scene had gone on for 10 minutes. Like, literally, it's a 10-minute long chase scene. And it's completely pointless, because then they catch her. And they take her outside, and start, like, interrogating her. I don't know. But yeah, it's 10 minutes long, and it's just dumb, and it serves no purpose. Uh, for some, at one point, Anakin says, "I think that she is a changeling," and I don't know why he thinks that. I mean, it turns out she is. Obviously, throughout the movie, every time it's like, I don't get why the character thinks that. It's because the writer thinks that. Like, they're supposed to be correct. But it's always like, I don't know where he got this information. I don't know where he got the idea that she's a changeling. And I don't know what the point of making her a changeling is. Changelings are apparently an alien race that can look like other aliens. Again, it doesn't matter. She didn't have to be. It changes nothing. Ironically, her being a changeling doesn't change a thing. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Why not just kill them? Why not? Oh, okay. So, so they have her. She's on the ground and they're like interrogating her, and then a dart flies in, hits her in the neck, and she dies immediately. And just like it turns out, it's this bounty hunter, Jango Fett, and he's like just standing there on like a tower, like right behind them, and then he just jetpacks away. He's got a silly jetpack, and he flies away. And it's like, just like her shooting the probe instead of shooting Obi-Wan, why didn't Jango Fett just shoot the Jedi instead of shooting his own assassin? It doesn't make any sense. Like he had the ability to kill any of the three of them, and he chose the one that is not his enemy. Or he should have just shot his rocket. We found out later that his jetpack also has like a missile. He should have just blown them all up, all three of them. Or just use his gun. It doesn't make any sense. And then he just flies away. And it's like, how did he get there? Was he also following them? Like, through that whole crazy-ass chase scene through the whole city? Was there also a third guy that was just following behind them with his jetpack? Because he's not in a car. He's just flies away on a jetpack. So I guess he was also following them through that whole sequence, or just happened to already be there and thought, well, I guess I'll take care of this while I'm here. And then he flies away, and Obi-Wan and Anakin have no reaction. They don't go, who is that? Oh god, let's chase him the way we just chased her. No, they don't even stand up. They just look back, see Jango Fett fly away in his jetpack, and go, that was weird. Anyway, let's take this poison dart and get out of here. It doesn't make any sense. Oh, okay, so the next note here, I don't remember when they say this, or what this note is specifically in reference to, but the scene ends after that, probably awkwardly. Oh, actually, that scene might have ended a little bit more naturally, but I don't remember exactly what they're talking about. But in, like, the very next scene, they say something about how powerful Yoda is. And they say stuff like that a couple of times throughout this movie. And actually, even back in the first one, when they take Anakin's midichlorians, there's no mention of midichlorians in this one. I don't think there's any mention of midichlorians in the third one either. So that's just a concept they threw out there one day. Everyone hated it, and then they just never did anything with it. But they, in the first one, when they take Anakin's midichlorians, they're like, his midichlorians are massive. They're even higher than Yoda's. And it's like, I hate that they've just decided that Yoda is the most powerful Jedi ever. And it's just kind of because the audience knows Yoda. We know Yoda's a Jedi Master from the first one. It's like, people like Yoda. People recognize Yoda, at the very least. So they decided he has to be, like, the most amazing... It's kind of how this whole thing is written. It's like, everything that's in that original has to be this massively important thing in this one. Yoda can't just be a Jedi Master. He has to be the most powerful and wise Jedi Master ever. It's just like the ridiculous way that this trilogy is written. I want to just bring that up real quick. Again, I don't remember exactly what scene they said this, and it got me thinking about it, but I hated it. So then we find out something really weird that I really wanted to talk about. So they're talking about something called the Military Creation Act, and I think the text scroll actually at the beginning might have also kind of hinted at this, but essentially what we learn here is that the galaxy under the Republic is apparently so great and so peaceful that the Republic doesn't have a military. It just has never needed a military. And actually in a later scene they say that there hasn't been a war since the Republic's founding 1,000 generations ago. So this might be the most peaceful universe in any work of fiction. This is like a more peaceful universe than like Care Bears, apparently, until just before the movie started. And yet, despite the world being so peaceful, the central government that runs everything doesn't have a military. And even the idea of creating a military is like highly controversial. Despite that, any sufficiently wealthy corporation can apparently just buy an entire army of killer robots, complete with tanks and planes and transports and big platform ships covered in cannons that you can use to blockade planets that you don't like. Like all the events of the first one, apparently just armies of killer robots are everywhere. In a galaxy that's supposed to be so peaceful, there's no need for a military. It doesn't make any sense. And later in this movie, we find out that it isn't even just the Trade Federation from the first one that has a killer army of killer robots. Every big corporation has its own killer robot army. How is that a thing? How are the battle droids just a thing? What? It doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense for the Republic to not already have an army. Either the Republic needed to already have an army, like, just as a given, the Republic should have already had an army. But it's especially weird to establish in your galaxy that they don't have an army, but all of the corporations do. I think I've made that point now. I ramble, but it's just so nonsensical. So then I just wrote down there's more awkward scenes with Padme. Every scene between Anakin and Padme is so awkward, and so often he just starts talking about things without any prompting for him to do it, and like really serious things, complaining about his life and the world, without any precedent for him to begin doing it. But we can't get into it because it's every scene. Is that woman her new... Oh, yeah, that made me laugh. Yeah, there's a scene where just before Padme leaves to go back to her home planet, because for some reason they think that assassins won't look for her if she's back on her home planet, which is the most obvious place to be. She's talking to this woman, and the character has no name, and I just started wondering, is that her new replacement? Like, is that like her decoy? This woman she's talking to before they get off the plane? Because that's just pretty funny, because her last decoy got exploded, so it's like, does she already have a new decoy? Does this new decoy know what happened to the last one? I don't know. It's never established whether that is or isn't. It doesn't really look like her, so I don't know. So this is something. There's a part where Obi-Wan goes to like this diner to meet with this guy, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But it's at this point that I realize that this city, I keep saying Jetson cars, and it's because that's what I realize that the city reminds me of is the Jetsons. It reminds me of the Jetsons, and it also made me think of, especially when it makes me think of Taurus as well from the Knights of the Old Republic games, but I think that was intentional. I think the design of Taurus was intentional to kind of look like these. This movie. But the other thing it kind of made me think of, especially when he goes into the diner, is a movie called Robots. If any of you have ever seen it, it's a computer animated movie about this like robot, blue robot. That everyone in this world's a robot, and he invents like a washing machine thing, and he takes it to the city to sell it as like an invention of his. If you've seen the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about at this point. Yeah, Coruscant makes me think of that. This movie made me think of that movie, which that is a completely computer generated movie. That's what these scenes make me think of. The visuals of it, I mean, especially I think it was that in the robot there is a robot, and I think that robot maybe just looks like the characters in the robot movie. I don't know. I'm saying the word robot too many times. This is probably a good time to also just mention in general. This is an incredibly ugly looking movie. They shove all this CGI into like every scene, and a lot of it I can't believe. I don't think it's even that it just doesn't age well. I think it just looks bad. Like some of it looks worse than the stuff in the first movie. Something about the stormtroopers in particular, I think looks awful. Like they look like they're made of plastic. And there's just a lot of scenes where, yeah, it's just such an ugly movie, and it's so visually inconsistent too, because everything's there's just all this shit everywhere. There's all these alien creatures, and there's just no visual consistency to what the things in this world look like. And it just makes it a mess to look at. So then they have this really weird scene though in the diner. Yeah, that was kind of a random aside, but it's an ugly movie, and I wanted to say that. So then they go to this diner, and Obi-Wan just like meets with this guy, and it's like, who the fuck is this guy? It's just this character. We have no context as to who he is, how Obi-Wan knows him, why he seems to know like everything about the galaxy. He knows about this hidden planet that nobody else knows about. He's just some random fucking guy that works in a diner. It's so strange, and I cannot understand the logic behind this scene. He knows the Camino by the poison dart for some reason. Okay, now I think about it, even this doesn't make any sense. Obi-Wan's clue to eventually lead him to Camino is the poison dart that Jango Fett shot into his assassin, which I guess was made and given to him by the Camino people. And then this random fucking guy that owns this diner immediately knows what it is. It's so strange, and I cannot understand the logic, the thinking behind including this element to the movie. But then he goes looking for it, and he goes to this map record place. I guess that's like in the Jedi Temple, I think. I'm not certain. The woman that works there dresses like a Japanese woman, even though she's white. And she says that like, oh, okay, well, this is why this is weird. It's not weird. This isn't a complaint. It's just interesting. It's something I didn't know was supposed to be the case in Star Wars. Because it's very different than Star Trek, which I keep comparing things to because I like Star Trek. Is that apparently in the Star Wars universe, they've like mapped out the entire galaxy? Because the woman basically says that if it's not in our records, then the planet doesn't exist. And Obi-Wan also is like, I can't find this planet in the records. So that's very strange and confusing. So it's like, yeah, I guess in the Star Wars universe, they have just mapped the entire galaxy. I didn't know that. It's not a complaint or anything. It's just different. a little odd, but the way that the kids training for their Jedi practice is really stupid. They're all standing around. There's a scene where they're all standing. There's like a little bunch of little kids. They call them younglings, which is so stupid. Younglings rather than children. I don't know why, but they're all standing around and they have this helmet over their face, and they're standing there with lightsabers, and they're going like just blocking laser bolts, I guess. And it just looks so stupid. They're all standing there in just this big crowd. And I don't know why it's being taught almost like a class. Like that's the lesson for the day, is Yoda's going to show you all how to block things. But in addition to that just generally being weird, that's how the Jedi are taught, it's also seemingly inconsistent. I thought that they were trained by their masters. I thought it was a one master, one apprentice kind of arrangements. Why is it that sometimes they're also being trained all together in like a weird class by Yoda in just a random room of what seems to be the Jedi Temple? I don't know. It's lame and it's weird. Oh, yeah, okay, so also this is the scene. Obi-Wan is trying to find this planet. He pulls out this big hologram thing. Actually, like that thing that he has. It's like a glass ball and like projects the galaxy around, and it's kind of neat. I don't know why there's a device in the middle of that training room for the purpose of projecting the galaxy like that on this ball, but whatever. And then he's like, the planet should be here. And then Yoda says, then go there. Like, just go there and see if the planet is there. And Obi-Wan goes, oh yeah, good point, I'll do that. And it's like, what was the point of even having this weird mystery? If that's the solution, is Obi-Wan just goes to some random fucking guy to be told to go to this planet. And then it's like, oh, but the planet isn't there. Oh, wait, no, yes it is. Other than just kill more time, I guess, and make the movie longer, even though it's over 2 hours long. I guess it's like to help establish that something mysterious is happening, but it's like, we already know that. We didn't need this random weird component. And at the end of it, Yoda's like, oh, I'll meditate on this mystery. And it's like, you do that, Yoda. You go meditate on it. You fucking Jedi are incapable of figuring out anything. You're being held by the hand through all of this shit and can't see incredibly obvious things and never figure out anything on your own. But yeah, you go meditate on it, Yoda. You're such a geyser of wisdom in these movies. The way you have no idea what the fuck is going on and never accomplish anything of value. Oh, okay. So this is really important too. I don't know what scene made me start thinking about this, but they're talking about the Separatists. Here's the thing. So this is really important about the movie. There's a growing war, like a civil war. There's the Separatists and I guess the Loyalists. I don't know. There's the Republic and the Separatists. And the Separatists are like a huge movement. The opening text scroll says something like thousands of systems. And later on, they say something like, we can get 10,000 more star systems to join us, which, one, sets the Star Wars galaxy up to be massively huge. Like, 10,000 more worlds. They established they already have thousands of worlds. So the Separatists are like, they've got to be like billions, if not trillions of people. And that's just one half of this conflict. Like, I don't think they really thought through those numbers and how huge they're making this war. But that is so many people, and this is like an organized political movement, but they never say what it is that the Separatists want. Like, they never say why they are unhappy with the Republic and why they want to leave it. And the thing is that it's really important to understand why, because the thing is that it's a huge driving force in the movie. But what's weird is that what information we do have about the Republic does set it up to be not so great. We know they have all these problems. We basically have been told that they're corrupt. We, as the audience, know that their leader is an evil space wizard. So it's this weird disconnect where we're watching the movie and either, like, best case scenario, we don't know enough about what's happening to make a judgment, or if you are paying attention, it really seems like the Separatists are in the right. So, but all of our protagonists that we're supposed to like are trying to kill them and stop them. The movie, and all the characters in the movie as well, just treat the Separatists and the potential downfall as the Republic as like an automatic bad thing. But we're not given any reason to think that it's bad, us the audience. The Separatists are just not explained enough for us to get it. And it's different than in episode, like, 4. Or the original trilogy. In the original trilogy, 1, we're not given much in the terms of specifics, but you're given basically every reason you need to assume that the rebellion has good reason for what they're doing. The Empire are clearly, like, these militaristic guys. They build a weapon that can blow up planets. They're an established order, and thus, all you really need to know about them is that they want to perpetuate their own existence. Rebellions, almost by their nature, are always going to be people who have really specific reasons for wanting to fight the government. And here it's even reversed. Like, you have to assume that the Separatists have reasons for what they're doing. They wouldn't be doing it otherwise. Whereas the Republic, the only reason it has to have is to perpetuate its own existence and maintain its own power. And so everyone we're watching in the movie is just, like, mindlessly fighting to do that, because we're not given enough information to know whether or not... The Jedi never struggle with the question of this conflict. It's just always assumed that they will fight and kill whoever threatens the Republic, no matter how justified their reasons for doing it are. And that's so weird. Because these are supposed to be the characters that we at least like, that we at least relate to. As much as the movie treats the downfall of this, like, democracy as a bad thing, and the rise of the Emperor as, like, a tragedy, everyone in the movie is already, like, extremely authoritarian, and just takes any disruption to the current power structure as bad, as something to be punished by death. It's just... It's just poorly thought through. Okay, so let's move on from that topic. Just know that question, what does the Separatist want? The moment you start thinking about it, the whole idea of why these movies exist start crumbling down. But over on Camino, where Obi-Wan now is, Camino looks weird to me, and I don't know what it is about Camino. Camino looks like something out of a different movie. It's like weird whites everywhere, and like the aliens are these, I don't know, something about it. It's in the back of my head, I think, that there's another movie specifically that it's making me think of, and it makes every scene there feel strange. Because it can't quite place it. And there's something about the way that, like, the chairs come down from the ceiling too, that's like, I feel like I've seen this in another movie, but I can't figure out what. Oh, okay, yeah. So the Caminos are also very weird. So just like with how apparently anyone who's rich enough can buy an army of droids, you can also go to Camino and they will just clone you an army of clones. Um, Anyone with enough money can just have an army of clones as well. Although how they got paid is never clear. Like, apparently they were told in secret to build this clone army, and it's like, I have to imagine that was expensive. Who paid the Caminos to do this? Was it that Master Saifu Diaz? I don't think so. I think, although the movie never says this, that I don't know if Master Saifu Diaz, this guy who we never see and we never are told anything about, actually told them to build the clone army. I think the idea is that it was actually Palpatine. But either way, it's like, I have to imagine buying an army of clones is expensive, and it's like, who paid the Camino for that? How did nobody notice that kind of money going missing? But yeah, anyone can just buy an army, and it isn't because it's established this isn't the first time they've done this. Lots of other people have apparently bought clone armies. It's what the Camino are known for. In fact, the Prime Minister Camino even says that the army they're building is one of the finest we've ever put together. So there are other armies that they've made, apparently, that are comparable out in the galaxy, I guess. How does nobody know about the Camino? Like, how is this not the biggest deal in the world? Why, like, it doesn't make any sense. Obi-Wan had to go around and only this random guy that works at a diner knew who these people were, when apparently they're just pumping out clone armies. It doesn't make any sense. Also, apparently, the Camino have been building this clone army for 10 years, and at no point in those 10 years did they ever try to contact anyone from the Republic. The one lady, when Obi-Wan shows up, is even like, we were beginning to think you weren't coming, and it's like, well then why didn't you go to Coruscant and be like, hey, I'm from Camino, we're working on this clone army. Do you guys want to check in on it? Or can we talk to somebody about this whole thing? It's kind of a long-term project. Pretty big deal. The check bounced. They assigned us, so maybe I could talk to someone about that. No, for 10 years, they just sat over in a corner quietly making millions of soldiers for a government that apparently didn't know that they existed, and they never thought to contact anyone with any concerns in those 10 years. They didn't even talk to anyone, apparently, when they accepted the order. They talked to one Jedi, and were like, that's good enough. I guess if as long as he got the money, I guess. But again, where to get the money? Okay, so this is a little bit also nitpicky here, but it's weird. They give specific numbers for these clones, and I'm pretty sure that these numbers don't make a whole lot of sense. The guy says that they've made 200,000 clones, and 1 million more are on the way. And it's like, it took them 10 years to make those 200,000. What does he mean 1 million more are on the way? Like, they're currently being grown? It's strange and I don't get it. Yeah. Also, we just established kind of that there are tens of thousands of inhabited like star systems with people and governments in this galaxy. Is 200,000 clones really even that many when we start talking on a scale that huge? Like, in total, for some reason, they're making 1.2 million clones. And that's a lot. That's a big army. Except it's not that big when you're talking tens of thousands of inhabited worlds. I don't see how this army is going to possibly maintain the kind of order they seem to be intending it to do. I don't know. That's like, again, that's like, I don't know. It just doesn't sound right to me. Then over on Naboo, I'm jumping into the next place. Over on Naboo, I'm just going to say, Naboo unlike in the first movie, does look like a real place now. It no longer looks like a weird city in the middle of a grassy field. It has actual discernible locations, and it looks more real. They did a better job with how they portrayed Naboo, so that's one point for them. Okay. So then this is where the famous sand scene is. I know this scene. Well, I know the little speech Anakin gives about sand, about how much he hates sand. Because it's coarse and rough and it gets everywhere. And yeah, that's a stupid line. I didn't realize that that whole scene is awful. There's one... See, it's just like every other scene with Anakin. It's so weird and awkward and uncomfortable. The little speech about sand itself. But also, like so many of his other bits of dialogue that are inappropriate, it comes out of nowhere. He just suddenly starts saying it. Padme is like talking about how when she was a kid she liked to swim out to this island, and out of nowhere he just starts talking about sand, and then he starts like rubbing her back, and then they awkwardly kiss, and then she goes, "No, we can't," and then the scene awkwardly ends. It's like that scene, and it's really short because that's the whole scene. It's like a minute or two long, and it just encapsulates everything wrong with like every interaction. It encapsulates the problem with the movie, that little scene, and I think that might be maybe why it's more famous. I don't know if people even realize that that is such a perfect example of everything wrong with this movie. Yeah, I'm sure you can probably just watch that whole scene on YouTube. Why is he still here? Oh, yeah, okay, so then he goes and he meets the Jango Fett, and I got wondering why they chose to clone an entire army out of just one guy, rather than, like, a diverse pool of people. It just feels odd that they would pick just this one guy and decide he will be the entire clone army. I don't know, that one you could probably give some kind of bullshit explanation for, but it's still just weird. And then I'm also not sure why that one guy is still hanging out on Camino. Like, he would have gotten involved with the project and provided them with the DNA to make more of him 10 years ago. So, why is it that it seems like he just lives there now? And he's, like, every now and again, I guess, just, like, popping off the planet and, like, still doing assassinations and bounty hunter stuff, but then he always goes back to Camino and hangs out there? Why? And he's like secretly working for the Confederacy for some reason. Like, he isn't just some random guy that they hired. As the movie goes on, it more and more seems like he's really involved in the upper echelons of this secret Confederacy thing. And it's like, why? And why is it so important? I don't know. It's so he'll be there, I guess. It's so that they can have Boba Fett kind of in the movie. I also started wondering at this point, we already talked about how weird the existence of the Camino and these clone armies are, but it's also like, again, it's just like, how does no one know who the Camino are? Because if they can just build entire armies whenever they want to, why haven't they taken over the galaxy? Are they just completely unambitious? Like, they're happy to just build armies and create and cause wars all over the place. But it never occurred to them to just use one of those armies themselves to just take over the whole motherfucking galaxy. So then, the Camino should be the dominant species of the Star Wars galaxy. So then, Anakin and Padme go on a picnic randomly. They're just having a picnic in a field. I think at some point along the way, they forgot why Anakin and Padme are even together on Naboo. I mean, like, the writers. The writer. I don't know who wrote it, but it's like it seems like they almost forgot that they're supposed to be hiding from assassins there. Um, so then Anakin says, of all the weird, awkward things, this is maybe the weirdest, most awkward and inappropriate. Is when he basically just says that the galaxy should be a sort of authoritarian regime with a dictator in charge. He just sort of says and just comes out and says that yeah, he'd be in favor of an authoritarian regime. And then it just cuts from that to them frolicking through the meadow, playing with pigs. And then the scene just kind of ends. Then they go and they eat a pear. That's also stupid. It's like they sit down to eat, and Padme's meal is going to be a single pear, which Anakin then takes and cuts in half and gives her back the other half. And then the scene ends. That was the scene. It's like their attempt to establish some kind of relationship between these two, and they're all terrible. All of the attempts to establish a relationship between the two are terrible, because they're either just like weird nonsense like that, like the pear scene, or like I said, most of their interactions are Anakin just complaining and being just awful. And it's a lot of the movie. Then they get to that scene by the fire, and like I said, basically everything is wrong. It just cuts to them, like so many other scenes. They're just sitting there by the fire, having this really intense conversation. All of a sudden, Anakin just starts talking, and it's instantly this super intense, weird, super horny, nonsense. It's all I've written here on my notes. I wrote scene by the fire, and then I just wrote creepy, awful, pathetic, weird, random, suddenly ends. That's every line out of Anakin's mouth. And he starts like crying and just like it's begging her to like date him. And then there's this one line that's just bizarre, which is Padme saying that we can't be together because you're a Jedi. And that makes sense. She's like, your thing says you can't be. And then she says, and I'm a senator. And it's like, wait, are senators also not allowed to, like, date people? What's with that? I'm pretty sure in the Red Letter Media review, it's been a long time since I watched those, too, but if I recall correctly, they point this out, and it is absolutely true, that this whole relationship really should be reversed. Anakin should be the one who doesn't want a relationship because his monk training, or at least is reserved about it because of his Jedi monk training, and Padme should be the one who's trying to get some D. But no, it's reversed for some reason. It doesn't make any sense. Because Padme has no reason to not want a relationship. In fact, a lot of people, at least in real life, expect senators and politicians to be in like monogamous relationships, to be married and such. But for some reason, she's like, no, I can't. I'm a senator. Senators can't get laid. Yeah. But no, it's Anakin. Because Anakin's completely obsessed with her in a way that doesn't feel like romantic or being in love. It just feels like he's obsessed with her, like an actual crazy person. He met her 10 years ago for like a week, and he says he just thought about her every day since, that he has dreams about her. It's the thing is that in this relationship, no guy should relate to Anakin. And the thing is that, sadly, I think a lot of women could probably relate to Padme in terms of having this creepy guy who won't leave her alone, and this is like a horror movie for a lot of women if you just tweak it a little bit. Okay, so this is another thing. So this kind of came up in the first movie too. I questioned. I thought it was weird in the first movie how the Jedi, especially Qui-Gon Jinn, immediately jumped to Darth Maul being a Sith just because he got attacked by some guy in the desert. And everyone just started rolling with that. And now in this movie, they keep referring to a Dark Lord of the Sith. And it's like, where did you guys get that from? Why do you think that is a thing that is happening? I have no idea why the Jedi are... And again, of course, they're correct, because the characters know what the writer knows when he wants them to know it. But it's like, they're jumping to so many conclusions about the Sith. I have no idea where they got this idea that there is a Dark Lord of the Sith with some kind of master plot who's doing all of these things, but they keep referencing it. In fact, at the end of the first movie, they even go, oh, there's usually two Sith. For some reason, we know this information. There's two Sith, a master and an apprentice, but which one did we kill? And I guess in between, they all just decided they killed the apprentice, and there's a Dark Lord Master out there somewhere. Obi-Wan blows up in a spot. Okay, so then Obi-Wan has a pointless fight scene with Jango Fett. And it is just pointless, because at the end, Jango Fett just flies away, and Obi-Wan throws a tracker onto it, and it could have easily just as easily been Jango gets on the ship, starts flying away, he throws the tracker on it. The entire fight was pointless. Actually, I'll talk about it in a second. There's one part in the fight also where Obi-Wan just blows up and is fine, which is another thing throughout this movie of things happening where it's like, that should have killed you, and nope, they're just fine. He actually blows up twice. He gets like shot by a missile and shot by a laser cannon, and in both we basically see him explode, and then he's just like, oh, that was crazy, and he gets up. Was Jango Fett expecting to get attacked? Was he expecting to have to fight Obi-Wan on that landing pad? Because he's wearing his full bounty hunter gear when Obi-Wan shows up. He must have gone... He said, in the previous scene, he's like, pack your things, we're leaving, we're getting out of here. So he said, pack your things, grab everything, we're getting out of here. But also I'm going to get dressed in my battle armor for the walk over to the ship. Like, oh, Jango, mate, if you would just not put your armor on, you would have been gone by the time that the guy showed up to attack you. But the reason he's wearing it is because they wanted to have a pointless fight scene. It couldn't just be that Obi-Wan gets there a little bit too late, or Obi-Wan comes to the door, Jango shoots at him and gets on the ship and they fly away. Which actually is exactly what happens in Episode 4. The stormtroopers show up, start shooting at the Millennium Falcon. Han Solo shoots back a couple times, gets in the ship, and they fly away. See? Effective. Good. Not like a 5-minute long pointless fight scene. To get attacked. Yeah, so then... But what's funny is that at the end of the scene, it even basically does that. It does like a reset button. Obi-Wan falls down off the side of the building, the landing pad, and then he does like a flip to get a stupid-looking flip to get back onto a railing, and he runs inside of a door. And then I guess he just knows his way around this place now, because he immediately makes his way back up, and he comes out the same door he showed up in at the start of the scene, and the ship's taking off, and he throws the thing on. So it's like, you could cut out the whole fight scene, and it would play out exactly the same. He comes through the door, he throws the thing. Oh, okay, so then, so why do they do this? Oh, okay, so Anakin has a bad dream and he decides he needs to go save his mom. This was like an hour into the movie when this starts happening, and I realized that I had only been watching the movie for an hour. It felt like 2 hours long. This movie is so dull and so stupid that it just went on and on. And I know it's ironic, given that I've been talking for about an hour now. But seriously, it's unwatchable. But then they go to Tatooine, and Watto from the first movie's there, the bug guy that owned Anakin, and he he doesn't recognize Anakin, which to me it's like, good, yeah, you shouldn't recognize Anakin, but that's the movie that's the movie acknowledging that this character, I think his name is Christian Slater, looks nothing like the kid. There's no reason anyone would recognize this kid after 10 years. That's just going back to what I said earlier when he first meets Padme. And it's a little confusing too. At first I thought Watto was homeless. It almost presents it like he's homeless. He talks about how he has money problems and he's like sitting outside and he's wearing a stupid hat and he's got like a bit of a beard now. And he's like working on just like I think it's like the head of a droid. And it feels like they're saying that things went bad for him after the events of the first movie and now he's homeless. But then at the end, it seems like he brings them inside, like into his shop. So, I don't know. It's just a little thing I noticed. So another thing is that, okay, I'm going to come back to this in the third movie because I don't remember, but if C-3PO gets his mind like wiped in episode 3, and I don't remember that being a thing, then this isn't an issue. But if he doesn't, if there's nothing to establish that he shouldn't remember the events of these movies, C-3PO was living on Tatooine in that house where Luke lives for years, and nobody mentions it. And actually, even if C-3PO doesn't remember, he lives with Lars and Aunt Beru, Uncle Lars and Aunt Beru, for years in this house. So, shouldn't they, in episode 4, remember C-3PO? That's just like a thing of complete... it's the kind of problem you run into when you insist on just shoving all this crap into the prequel. Wherever you can put it. Because, yeah, at the end, it starts episode 4, they buy C-3PO, and nobody mentions that he already owned C-3PO. I don't know. So this is an interesting scene. They go to, like, an asteroid belt, and they have kind of a ship chase scene, and I actually really liked it at first. Jango's ship is really cool looking. It's the same ship Boba has in the original trilogy, but it's a cool ship. And he starts like ejecting these bombs out the back, and the bombs are really cool. There's this cool explosion and the cool sound. I really like it, and it's exciting at first. And it starts shooting all the lasers, and I like it at first. It's really cool, but Boba Fett sucks. That kid. Kid actors always do, but this one in particular was really bad. But then by the end, second half of it, it falls apart because the lasers are really cool at first, and then they just become annoying because, again, like the whole thing of them being immortal, these lasers are clearly hitting Obi-Wan, but he's totally fine. Like, he should be completely annihilated by those things, and he's just not, so it's annoying. And then, for some reason, he stops firing the lasers, and instead shoots this ridiculous homing missile thing that just looks stupid, as it's just, like, weaving all over the place and following him, and it's like... I don't know. It starts off strong. It's a cool little scene in space at first, and then it just becomes stupid by the end. Again, the missile following him all over the place, again, even feels like Looney Tunes logic. It feels like something that would be in a Looney Tunes short. So then, after however long it's been, like an hour and a half, like as long as this video is, he gets to Geonosis, Obi-Wan, and we finally... This is when I realized that Yeah, it's been like an hour and a half into the movie. An hour and 20 minutes. I put a note. An hour and 20 minutes into the movie. We finally see Count Dooku, despite him ostensibly being the antagonist of this movie. You don't see him for an hour and 20 minutes. Which I just want to say, Count Dooku, played by Christopher Lee. Rest in peace, Christopher Lee. I love Christopher Lee. Count Dooku's a terrible character, but Christopher Lee does, I think, the best anyone possibly could with him. I love that guy. But yeah. So here's the question as well. It's sort of two other things that are raised for me, questions, with this first scene. Christopher Lee, Count Dooku, he's meeting with all these like aliens, and they're like representatives from big companies. There's like a banking one, and the Trade Federation, and I think like a manufacturing company there. And it seems like they're, for some reason, even though they say that they have thousands of star systems that agree with the goals of the Confederacy, or the Separatists, they're not the Confederacy yet, but the Separatists, they still want an army of droids rather than just getting people who support this movement to fight for them. They brought all these people together, and they're just gonna combine their privately owned droid armies to be the army for the Separatists. And it's like, why do you even need a movement if you're just going to use droids? And why can't you get people to agree to just help you fight? The Geonosians fight, but they never even entertain the idea of, like, an army of Geonosians. It's just always assumed that they'll use droids. And it's like, why do they even need this massive, colossally huge droid army? At this point, the Republic doesn't have an army. They're like, oh, we'll overwhelm the Jedi with all of our droids. And it's like, well, yeah. It seems like there's only a couple hundred of them, and you have like 1,000,000 battle droids. Of course you're going to overwhelm them with it. It feels like you don't need all this secret scheming and planning, when as far as you know at this stage, the enemy has no military, and a huge proportion of its government is actively opposed to the idea of creating one. It's overkill, is my point. Except it's not overkill, because again, essentially, the characters know what the writer knows, which is that the Republic is about to get an army. So the Confederates needed an army to make it a war. Okay, so then Anakin goes and tries to rescue his mom. She dies. It's so sad. I think it seems to be... I don't want to get into it. It never says why the... I don't want to get into it, actually. I don't want to talk about this note. It's... Yeah. But the only thing I kept thinking during this scene where you're supposed to be... It's supposed to be a sad, emotional scene. Anakin's mom is dead. And then he goes and kills all the sand people. But it's like... Hey, Anakin, if you were this upset about your mom, maybe you should have checked in on her before now? Like, rather than just running around having all kinds of adventures, maybe if your mom was that important to you, and you knew that she was a slave the last time you met her, maybe you could have, convinced the Jedi Council to give you the credits to go free her, to put your mind at rest. It's like, for 10 years he hasn't thought about his mom, who was a slave, until just before she dies. It's the same as in the previous movie. Like, Qui-Gon Jinn also wanted to free Shmi, and just didn't, because he didn't have the funds at the time, except later in the movie he absolutely does, and could have freed her too, and just no one mentions that. And again, in this movie, no one mentions it. It's like Shmi's status as a slave is just like a plot device. that the movie does not want to address when it's not uh, able to leverage it to get Anakin to where he needs to be. It's like, yeah. Um, so then Anakin starts killing all the stormtroopers, and I just want to mention this. It cuts away to a scene of Yoda, and he's meditating, I guess. He can sense what's happening, and he talks to Mace Windu, and he's like, Anakin Skywalker is suffering and in so much pain. And then it cuts away, and it's like, what was that scene? Why was that there? Like, did the movie not think that the audience would get that? That they needed Yoda to explicitly say that Anakin's upset? Because it means nothing. It adds to nothing. It just happens and then it stops happening. That's a lot of the movie. They drink. Anakin comes back after his mom's dead, and they drink blue milk. Anakin starts freaking out. He says, like, I could have stopped this. And I just thought to myself, yeah, at any point in the last 10 years, if you had bothered to check in on your mom, you probably could have set this on a different course. If you had spared her a thought in the last 10 years before the day before she died, yes, maybe you could have prevented this. I just went back to that line of thinking. Why did you not check in on this situation sooner? So then he starts crying, and he's freaking out, and he's so angry about his mom dying. And then Padme says one of my favorite lines in the movie. She says, "What's wrong, Annie?" It's like, what do you think is wrong? He showed up with his mother's corpse 20 minutes ago. What do you think is wrong? Why would she possibly say that? And it's just to prompt him to talk about killing all the not stormtroopers, Tusken Raiders. But she asks him what's wrong. They haven't even buried her yet. And then, after saying, I slaughtered an entire tribe of people, including their women and children, her first line of dialogue to him after that is, to be angry is to be human. She is incredibly understanding about this guy having just killed an entire village of people. Oh, then they get a message from Obi-Wan saying, come to Geonosis and check out these droids. And Padme says, we need to go save him. We need to go rescue him. For some reason, Padme is very concerned with rescuing Obi-Wan, who she barely knows. But she's like, oh, Geonosis is halfway across the galaxy from Coruscant. They'll never make it in time. We need to go first. And it's like, despite the immense difference in space, the Jedi don't get there much later than Anakin and Padme do. They get there almost immediately after them. And Yoda even goes to Kamino first and picks up the clone army and then brings that to Geonosis. And he's still there, what seems to be later the same day that Padme and Anakin got there. It's just a throwaway line, and it's the whole... Everyone just gets wherever they need to be when they need to be there. Oh, yeah, okay. So then they're like, okay, we need to vote. The Senate needs to vote on approving this clone army. And someone is like, no, that'll never happen. Even with the imminent danger of the separatists having their own army of killer robots, they will never approve the creation of a clone army. And it's like, okay, but then they are torn on the idea of creating an army, and they say that they would never approve it. But then in the very next scene, they all approve appointing Palpatine as dictator, whose first act will obviously be to create a clone army. Cut out there again. No, so because they can't agree on making him on building an army, they make Palpatine dictator so that he'll build an army. That doesn't make any sense either. It's nonsense. Like, unless making a guy basically the dictator and enacting a like emergency power to this guy somehow requires less agreement by the Senate than creating an army. Either way, it's stupid. It makes no sense. Dictator. So then, okay. So then we're back on Geonosis. I'm just walking through the whole. Yeah. Then we're back on Geonosis. I'm just looking at how many more notes I've got. I just thought it was funny that when they first get there, they're walking through this tunnel and it's full of these Geonosians, and like these are just like unarmed factory workers, and Anakin just starts killing them with his lightsaber. Eventually, Geonosians that seem to be guards, they have like their weird green guns start showing up. But the first handful of them Anakin kills are just unarmed workers at this plant. Which I think is very funny. I guess in the previous scene he killed a bunch of Tuskens and admitted to killing a bunch of them that were unarmed too, and that made a woman apparently fall in love with him, so I guess he decided he'd just keep on doing that. So yeah, we already talked about just visually inconsistent. The movie is just visually inconsistent too. Like nothing in this, because they're so concerned with just filling it with shit, just whatever shit they want, whatever popped into their heads when designing it. Everything is so just doesn't look like it's part of the same world, and it relies so heavily on like it's like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Like, other than the human actors, everything is a computer. And they just don't look right. They don't go together. And this scene in the factory really made that apparent for me. Well, it already was apparent, but I decided to write it here when watching this factory scene. I wrote, what even are these machines? So many of those machines on this conveyor belt, it's like, what are these doing? There's like giant butcher knife things. Anakin's arm gets like a big metal plate comes down and it gets like drilled in around his arm, and it's like, what even is that? What is this thing that's perfectly shaped like a human arm that later gets all chopped up by giant chopping blade machine? What are these things? It doesn't make any sense. It's like a roller coaster, not a roller coaster ride, but like one of those amusement park rides is what it is. Then they get captured and thrown in an arena, and I don't know why they get thrown in a big arena to be executed that way. Seems like a bad idea to me, but for some reason that's what they do. This is where like the romance comes to a head, I guess. They kiss and confess that they love each other. Padme and Anakin. I don't know why they love each other. I don't believe them when they say that they love each other. Especially Padme. Padme genuinely seems to have fallen in love with Anakin because he killed a bunch of Tusken Raiders. Because prior to that, she was like, no, we can't. And then that happens. And then they don't really interact again until this moment where she's like, I love you. And it's like, was it killing all the Tuskens that did it for you? Is that why Anakin is now just killing all these unarmed bug guys? But yeah, when they get thrown into the arena, there's like 3 monsters. There's like a rhino thing, a cat lion thing, and then there's this big bug thing. I can't remember what that thing's called. It's in the Star Wars Battlefront game, the second one. There's a map where they are running around and killing. They'll kill your guys. I don't remember what they're called though, but I like the design of the big bug. Just like a plus for the movie. I like that big bug. I think he's neat. So then Padme suddenly has, like, incredible superpowers that she shouldn't have. She kind of started showing that when they were running around the conveyor belt, but here, suddenly she can, like, pick locks. She's, like, chained to a metal thing, and she's apparently just suddenly a master lock picker, and can scale up this thing and fight the rat monster, and then she's running around riding a rhino and shooting a gun. And it all just feels incredibly out of place. She suddenly just has to be, like, super... She's not, like, that crazy. She's not just, like, suddenly insane with her abilities. But it's just completely out of nowhere. She doesn't do anything like this any time before or after. The lock-picking thing in particular, it's like, why does she know how to do that? How did she do that? The movie just doesn't care to answer it. It just wants to have ridiculous, nonsensical action scene. And actually, from this point on, the movie's incredibly boring. Well, from this point on is also pretty boring, just because you're not engaged with anything that's happening. But from this point on, the movie is almost pure action, it should be said. The last, like, 40 minutes of this movie, everything from when they, kind of, to a certain degree, everything from when they enter the factory with the Geonosians to the end of the movie is like one giant action sequence. So anyway, yeah, there's no tension because they just so easily escape from this whole situation. The situation the Geonosians have put them in is really stupid. And then, because Padme suddenly is like a lock-picking master and can scale up towers and kick monsters, she's fine. And then Anakin and Obi-Wan pretty easily get out of the chains as well and handle the monsters that are after them. So there's really no tension, and it even like, I don't buy the romance scene that preceded this at all. Again, their relationship is nonsense. But the fact that, like, they're almost like, oh, we're going to die, I love you, and they kiss, and then they're rolled out into this arena. And then they just easily escape. Nothing happens. No new element is brought in. It turns out they are both just perfectly capable of escaping this stupid situation. And it completely, even if you did care about that scene, this scene completely undermines it. Anyway, so then an army of Jedi show up to, I guess, rescue these three people. They send 100 Jedi who have somehow snuck into the arena. I guess all these people that look like humans and squid-headed people, and one guy looks like a parasaur, like a humanoid dinosaur. Apparently they snuck into this city of human termite creatures. No one noticed. They're all over the arena all of a sudden. And Count Dooku and Obi-Wan have this stupid exchange. Count Dooku says, "You're impossibly outnumbered," and Mace Windu is like, "I don't think so," and it's like, what are you talking about? I don't think so. Yes, you are. There's an entire army. Like, you brought 100 guys, maybe. There's like 10,000 Geonosians in this arena alone, and you know they have a robot army here. What do you mean, I don't think so? We're not impossibly outnumbered. You had to have known that. Like, he could have said some other line. He could have said some rebuttal that's, like, cool or something, but just, I don't think so, when he's obviously incorrect. They didn't... Yeah. And that just leads into the Jedi's plan here being unbelievably stupid and poorly thought through. Like, their plan was to just go to a planet where they knew there was an entire army and just start killing people with their lightsabers and just see how that works out. It's like, obviously they're defeated. Obviously they all die. This was the worst plan ever. They just are suddenly all over the arena and are just like, I guess we'll just all die fighting a seemingly inexhaustible supply of battle droids. It's just the dumbest plan, and it's just a lame fight. That arena fight. Uh, oh, um, and soon after the battle, the clones show up, and it's just kind of a further extension of the how did these Jedi get all over inside of this arena without the Geonosians noticing, and then it's like, how did they not notice that their whole planet is getting invaded? They just suddenly is millions of stormtroopers all over the planet and like battleships and everything, and it's like it snuck up on them. There's the entire Geonosian population inside of that arena watching that fight. There was nobody to keep track of if they're being invaded. Then another line gets said here, which is this is a line from Yoda, and it's Yoda. So Yoda famously talks in a kind of silly way, but the way he talks has gotten like so extreme, to just such ridiculous extremes, and for the most part I've ignored it. But he got like he gets like progressively more talking like Yoda over the course of this movie and the previous one, and he says what is probably, I think, the dumbest of all the Yoda ways of talking, which is, around the survivors a perimeter create. And it's just so dumb sounding. It's the writers desperately making him talk in like Yoda-isms when it's completely inappropriate. Like, he does not have to talk that way all the time. Also, Yoda just invaded this planet with this droid clone army. Something I never really noticed before is that, yeah, Yoda's the one that started this war. He just invaded this sovereign planet and kicked the whole war off. You could absolutely, potentially blame Yoda for everything that happens following this. Under his command, the first shot was fired. And for some reason now the Jedi are just leading this army. I guess that's... No, it is weird. The Jedi are suddenly just... All the clone troopers are just answering to the Jedi. And it's like... Is that what they were told to do? To just... Oh, the Jedi as, like, diplomats. The Jedi as, like, ambassadors and investigators was weird. But the Jedi as, like, generals is where it just becomes, like... insane that they didn't think through what the Jedi's purpose is in this government at all. But it's clearly, it's whatever they want to be. Okay, so then a giant battle starts happening, and I want to say something else here. In the previous one, I talk about how it's strange that they made the battle droids, who are supposed to be like our main antagonists here, so non-threatening. And it's true that the battle droids are still non-threatening in this one as well. And the Geonosians, similarly, you don't see much of them, but they're not really threatening either. They're kind of pathetic looking, and they like live in like tunnels, and they seem like just afraid of the Jedi. And it goes so far in this one to where I like the battle droids, and I feel kind of bad for them. They're just so like goofy looking. They're so non-threatening, and while they do kill a lot of Jedi in that arena scene, they're clearly so weak compared to the Jedi that I just feel bad for them when they're getting like killed en masse in this final battle here. I feel worse for the Jedi, and to a certain degree, again, the Geonosians. Their world's getting fucked up. Than I do for the Jedi or the Stormtroopers, who are just like tyrants who are invading these people's planet in a sort of like first strike kind of thing. They're like here to kill Dooku, and it's like Dooku is just like leading a political movement that goes against the government that the Jedi prefer. for reasons that they don't bother explaining. They just like it because it's the status quo. So they're trying to assassinate this fucking dude, who's like threatening it for what seems like legitimate reasons. I don't know. I can the actual like the movies focus on these politics, not focus on them in a way in which you can actually make sense of the specifics of what everyone's trying to do, but just enough for you to see that the protagonists of these movies seem to be in the wrong. Alright, anyway, like I said, I'm rambling at this point. It's been almost an hour and a half, but I like battle droids, and I feel bad for them when they're getting blown up and chopped to pieces by the Jedi. Oh, okay. At one point, made me feel even worse for them. At one point, it seems like the droids are just trying to escape. There are these ships all over. There's these big ball ships, and then these like tower ships, and they don't seem like battleships. They almost seem like it's what the droids are trying to escape on. They're retreating on these ships, and the clones are just blowing them up, like out of the sky. These like defenseless things that they're trying to run away, and the droids, the clones and the Jedi are just destroying them as they try to run. It just made me feel so bad for them. And made just the droids, the Jedi and the clones seem like dicks. The Geonosis. Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is weird too. It's something I've never really thought about before. There's like an implication here that the Geonosians, the bugs, are maybe the ones who designed the Death Star, or at least they were involved in its design. And again, that almost makes the Geonosians incredibly important to the Star Wars galaxy, kind of like the Camino, but they just aren't. But the leader of the Geonosians was at least very aware of the Death Star, even if him and his people didn't design it. But the dialogue does suggest that he at least was involved in its design, and I don't know, something about that just seems weird. And I'm not sure if the timeline really lines up with that either. The idea that the Death Star is basically already designed by this point in the story. It certainly took them a long time to build it compared to how fast they were building the second one in Episode 6. It also makes me interested. I've never seen Rogue One. I'd be interested to see Rogue One and to see if it makes sense, because I'm aware of like the general plot of Rogue One. And it's like, does it really make sense that the Geonosians were the ones already designing this thing with that movie? Because I think the girl's dad designs it in that movie. I think. Like I said, I haven't seen it. So yeah, as I said earlier, basically for like 40 minutes, it's just this battle, like between the actual big battle between the droids and everyone flying around and the arena fight, and it's like a good 30-40 minutes. But at a certain point, they're chasing Count Dooku. For some reason, Count Dooku is going to a hangar that's like miles and miles away from where he was, in the middle of nowhere. That's the only place on this planet that he could get a ship, is just this hangar in the middle of nowhere. That he had to go to by himself. They say blow Dooku up, but the stormtrooper responds that they're out of rockets, and it's like, okay, then use the lasers. Like, we've seen that this thing's covered in lasers. Why is it a problem that you don't have the rockets? And this is a good example also of the Jedi having crazy superhuman powers until times when the movie doesn't really want them to, because Padme just kind of falls out of the ship, and neither of the two Jedi Knights who normally can basically see the future and have lightning-fast reflexes can do anything to prevent it. The ship rocks, and suddenly Padme also has no sense of balance, because she, and only her, and oh no, one stormtrooper randomly too, fall out of the ship. Land in the desert, but she's okay. They were traveling like 1,000,000 miles per hour on this ship, and she just fell and landed on the sand, but she's okay. She hops right back up. Then the transporter lands, and even though there were more clone troopers in the transporter with Anakin and Obi-Wan, none of them get out of the transport, I guess, and then they immediately get blown up. They fight Count Dooku. Count Dooku shoots lightning. It's really stupid. I hate that they just decided that other people can just shoot lightning too for some reason. And the lightning effect looks dumb. Count Dooku hits Obi-Wan twice with his lightsaber, but somehow doesn't kill him. He, like, just barely... Like, these lightsabers can cut through, like, solid steel. So if you get hit by it, and it doesn't kill you, the person holding the lightsaber has to be, like, intentionally trying really hard to not kill you. And Count Dooku does it twice. He hits Obi-Wan in the arm, and then hits him in the leg, and both times it just makes just a little burn mark, a little scorch. He's okay, though. How did it not just chop him in half? Count Dooku and Anakin fight, and it's one of the silliest fights in the entire I've seen in any of these movies so far. It just looks stupid. It keeps doing these close-up shots of their faces, and they're both just... And it's just the light. I wrote down it as glow stick fight on my notes here. Then Yoda fights, and that's also really stupid. I mean, I could talk about this for ages. This has been going on so long, this video. I don't want to get into Yoda fighting. It's just... Yoda should not have ever fought anyone in these movies, because it just looks silly, first of all. Him jumping around, this tiny guy, like, sword fighting a grown man. But also, it makes him wildly unimpressive. Like, Yoda's so much less cool now that we've just seen him fight with a lightsaber like everybody else. I could do a whole video just talking about Yoda fighting. I could do a whole video just talking about Yoda and how mismanaged he is in every movie other than Episode 5. So where's... oh, yeah, so this is just a small thing. Yoda's at this hangar, too. Presumably he flew there in a transport. I think he says to one of the troops to get him a transport. But then when Padme shows up, there's no ship on the landing pad. Small, insignificant detail, but I just noticed it. I don't get Count Dooku. I think I already talked about that. I don't get Count Dooku. I don't get what his deal is. I don't get why he's a count. I don't get why everyone listens to him. I don't get... Yeah, I just don't get Count Dooku. At one point, Dooku also basically... He's working for Palpatine, but at one point he does honestly tell Obi-Wan about how Palpatine is running the Senate, which I guess we find out is true. And he says, "Help me kill Palpatine." So that's weird. It makes it a little confusing what exactly his motivations are. But whatever. The scene ends, they go on. Then this is something else I got thinking about. At the very end of the movie, we see all the clone troopers marching around and all these, like, what will eventually become the Imperial ships, the big triangle ships flying around. And I got thinking, okay, like, the Camino made all the clones, and they trained them. Did they also build all this shit? Like, did the Camino provide the entire... Like, they must have. They must have already had all this shit. Like, all the guns, and all the vehicles, and the armor, and the... Like, the Camino made all of it. The Camino are the most impressive race in the galaxy, and there's just no acknowledgement of them after this movie, before or after it. Because they just are able to provide army for the entire galaxy whenever they want. They did this in 10 years because somebody paid them to do it. And they kept it a complete secret for some reason as they did it, even though they thought they were doing it with the blessing of the government. And then the movie ends with Anakin and Padme getting married. I don't give a fuck about them getting married. I'm not even sure what's the point of them getting married either, since they're doing it in complete secrecy. It can't be like legally binding, and I feel like just getting these people involved in their fake wedding just risks revealing that they're doing it. Obviously, it can't be legally binding because it's supposed to be a secret. So I have no idea why they would actually like go through the process of getting married. Also, I think they've known each other for like a week at this point, and again, all of their conversations are weird, creepy nonsense. Their relationship is awful, and I don't like it or buy it. But that's the movie. That's Attack of the Clones, which is a stupid title, by the way. I guess the clones are important to it, but not really. Attack of the Clones makes it sound like the clones are the bad guys. But I guess a final thought about this movie, other than I think it's the worst one. I remember episode 3 a lot better than the others. I think I remember it a lot better than the others. So I don't think I'm going to be as surprised by that one. I might be. But I think Attack of the Clones is the worst Star Wars movie that I've seen. I haven't seen Solo or Rogue One. But I think this is the worst one. It's borderline unwatchable. The number of times I kept checking the time to just figure out how long this fucking thing is. It's boring, it's incomprehensible, it's ugly, and it's pointless. Like, there's basically two elements to the plot here, and that's that the Anakin stuff, setting up Anakin becoming Darth Vader, and then this separatist stuff, which is all boring and we're not giving a lot of context for, and it doesn't really go anywhere other than just the war starts and they get an army. That's basically the whole plot of this whole trilogy. There's two stories going on: Anakin becoming Darth Vader and Palpatine becoming the Emperor. And this movie kind of gets closer to Emperor Palpatine becoming the Emperor, and you do see the Anakin becoming Darth Vader stuff. Except, this is another thing I need to talk about with this before we leave off. Final thought here. Anakin has no real personality other than being obsessed with Padme and being a weird, angry creep who's irritated with everything. And as a result of that, we don't really see him, like, become Darth Vader in anything other than the technical specifics. He doesn't really fall to the dark side or change much in any way, because this entire he is just obsessed with Padme and constantly complaining about how bad things are and being angry and lashing out. So he's basically just set up to be a bad guy from the beginning. In this movie, he's already saying that he, like I said, would be in support of a totalitarian, like, violent regime with a central dictator. So, I don't get the point of this movie, I guess is what I'm saying. Don't watch it.